I found myself in a situation where I was needing to recalibrate my way of living about 10 years ago. A series of unfortunate events that, occurred in my life. This happens with lots of people. Many of the same things I'm sure a lot of people experience. And one of the first places I went to kind of empower myself during this powerless time of not having any control over my world and where it was tumbling, was to gratitude. And that was just, by keeping a gratitude journal and keeping in touch with what was wonderful for me in in the storm that was going on around me. And it really did help me recalibrate and find a way to be in this crazy world that we're in. And my art was a big part of that, or my crafting, or at that time it was a lot of journaling. So I was doing art journals. I've got tons of those packed away, and I run into little ones stuck in the bookshelf between other books. It's kind of funny. I just did it. It was a therapeutic kind of thing for me to work on those. I did a lot of knitting, a ton of knitting. Knitting was very meditative, particularly very intricate knitting like lace or, Fair Isle. The more involved and immersed I was in what I was doing, the better, So that's why I just love that it's called gratitude. I even call my little studio my space of grace. So that's why I love your name of your conference, because Space of Grace actually has a meaning for me. It was kind of my little place to get away. And I think a lot of artists find that when they get in that zone, it's very meditative and centering, and helps us be more resilient as human beings to what's going on in the world around us. So I guess I've been in training for a pandemic. I think what I was trying to do over the years is try to find my way as an artist, as what art meant to me. And I did, as I told you, I found it to be a very healing therapy, coping with my life, very empowering. And as things began to settle more, I started embracing more different kinds of things to do, doing more sewing, doing more. I got looms and I began weaving. My process evolved into many more things. As a result, I began creating an abundance of items, more than I could give away to anybody in my family or use myself. And at that same time, I discovered my local guilds, the Weavers Guild and the Fiber Guild. And the guilds sponsor once a year, and they have done so for 32 years, a festival or a show. It's called Creative Hands, and it's a fiber art show and sale. And so they have a jury where you go in, you show your stuff, and they said, sure, we want you to put your stuff in. What was great, because then I could just sell everything I made. And it really made a new freedom for me in exploring new techniques. For example, like I said, I took on weaving 5 years ago, and I felt like when I was sampling a technique or learning something, well, I'll just make that be a scarf and maybe somebody will want it. Or I'll make that be a set of tea towels and maybe somebody will want it. Well, sure enough, that's what happens. So I do sell my work, but only once a year. At this show. I called myself a generalist earlier because one of the things I've noticed about myself is I never give up any of the crafts I do, but I do keep adding in. So, in my early years when I was doing a lot of dyeing, that led me to batik work. So I did a lot of batik, and my kids were small, so I did a whole line of children's clothing. It was great. It was so much fun to do. And I sold a few of them on eBay, but mostly to fellow church members, and friends would order t-shirts for their kids because, I do these jungle frogs, and I had a big homeschooling group, so they wanted them. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing the batik work. When I got into knitting, I threw myself into that wholeheartedly also. I wasn't doing as much batik then, so I started designing patterns. And I put them on Etsy, and they were very successful during that time of chaos. It was really nice to be able to create something and connect with other people just through a piece of air, PDF, sitting on a PDF. And then there was always messages back and forth on Ravelry, which is it's a group of people that knit. It was wonderful connecting with people all over the world, because connecting with others through art is also so important. I think for me it is. I have just made some wonderful friendships through that, and it's so empowering. It's so wonderful for those of us who have had things that are out of our control to have that control over making and accomplishing and completing something beautiful and or useful, or whatever, whatever it is that we just even the process itself helps us build that self-resilience, that self-efficacy, I think it's called, that makes us feel if we can get a grip. Daily creative habit, which is not difficult at all. Once you get rolling on a habit, there's always the next step in one process or another. That's why I like to have multiple spaces in my home that I work. But that daily creative habit, and always making time every day, even in the busiest day I have to be a little more creative and think it through, but find one small thing that I can do to move a project forward, or to dabble in an idea. It's my nutrition, it's my vitamins, it's what I need to do every day. So let's see, where would I start? There's so many resources. First, I would probably, most of my beginner knitters, beginning weavers, I do ask them to buy at least one of the older, the newer books tend to be more abbreviated, and I like the older, the 1970, 1980 weaving books, Learn to Weave. They have the basic. Since I homeschooled my children, I felt pretty confident about putting together a curriculum. So when I found these Learn to Weave books, and I knew that the internet had tons of resources, but you can't really make sense of all the resources until after you've just read about and kind of gotten the basics. So I wrote myself a little lesson plan from some of these books. Our guilds have incredible libraries. If I had known about the Weaving Guild when I first started weaving, I would have just started there and just joined the guild and said, what's first, what's second, where do I, because there's so much knowledge in that group.